Red Bull and Ford working together starting in 2026 just got some really bad news, and this might change Max's mind about staying with his team. Right now, the engine they're building isn't going well at all, and people who know what's happening say they're not reaching their goals like they should be. Will this make them lose races? And if that happens, will it finally make Verstappen leave for a better team? There's no question that Red Bull's new engine project has shocked many people, but they were put in a spot where they had no other choice. Honda kept going back and forth with their help, so Red Bull decided they needed to make their own engine for the new rules. And even though Honda's smart ideas were supposed to help Red Bull a lot in 2026, it didn't really work out that way. Now that Ford is going to put their name on the engines for the new rules, people are asking questions. What's going to happen with how fast Red Bull can go? Reports from inside the team say that the Austrian team's engine will probably be one of the worst on the track along with Audi, and that would be a huge reason for Verstappen to decide what he wants to do next. Max Verstappen's time with Red Bull has been one of the hottest topics in the past few months, and for good reason. Everyone's been waiting to see what the four-time world champion will do, and it looks like he's gotten some very important news about this. Starting in 2026, Red Bull's engine is said to be way behind all the other teams on the track. Of course, how the air flows around the car will still be super important for how the car drives, especially with new movable parts coming back and DRS going away, but that might not be enough for Red Bull to make up for what they'll lose from having a bad engine. In the new rule period, the power from the engine and the battery will be split evenly, 50-50ths, which means that if a team comes in with a new engine, then they'll have lots of problems figuring out what needs to be fixed. Right now, Red Bull is rumored to be in a really bad spot compared to other teams, especially Mercedes. And the fact that Verstappen himself thinks his own team's engine will be worse than the Silver Arrows makes it even more unlikely that we'll see him fighting for the championship. And if he's not fighting at the front, then I think you already know what happens next. He's leaving Red Bull. Being loyal is rare these days, and even though Verstappen has shown his loyalty, there's a certain point where he can't take it anymore. The team's progress has been questioned a lot lately. Important people leaving has put Red Bull in a really tough spot, and at the end of the day, it's all about being at the front of the pack. Max has shown over and over that he doesn't need the fastest car by a lot to win races and championships. But if the gap is too big, like what's happening in 2025, then I don't think he'd be super happy to see how things are going right now. There are two teams that would be really excited to hear the news that's coming from Red Bull's engine group: Mercedes and Aston Martin. Toto Wolff is doing everything he can to convince Max that the next best move in his career would be to join Mercedes, whether that would mean replacing Russell or giving Antonelli a permanent spot in Alpine. Yes, that doesn't really look like what we see in the news, but we've seen that Russell still doesn't have a contract for 2026. And we've been waiting for quite a while to get updates about that. Let's not forget about Aston Martin too. The Silverstone-based team brought Newey and Honda from Red Bull, two very important things that Red Bull counted on heavily to win championships in both areas. Now that he is out of the picture, the whole situation looks different. But whether or not that would change Verstappen's decision to skip Mercedes' plan for Aston Martin's big dreams, only time will tell. One thing is for sure, the engines from Honda and Mercedes are definitely better than Red Bull's engines, and that can change Max's future very easily. His manager Raymond stated that he and Max haven't changed what they're focusing on at all. It's still on finding more speed in the future, and if that's not at Red Bull, then it would definitely be another team. Now, the safer choice would be Mercedes because of their history of building engines that are really good. But we can't forget about Honda either. They've been the backbone of Red Bull's recent wins, and with the new buildings in Silverstone as well as Newey being the technical director of Aston Martin, and I guess there's nothing left on the table from Lawrence Stroll. What needs to be said right away is that Max will likely stay with Red Bull in 2026. That's been reported by people close to him as they'll try to convince him that they're finally on the right path, which has been proven even more by firing him. There have been reports that he has been a big part of Red Bull's failures in the past couple of years, so they decided to move away from him. And the latest engine development with Red Bull is showing a lot about where they stand as a team. Would Max want to stay in a place like this? Most definitely not. But at the end of the day, he is the driver who has the choice of leaving whenever he wants to. So, with Mercedes and Aston Martin watching closely for information that's coming their way from reports close to Red Bull, we can't wait to see how the engine project in 2026 is going to change Verstappen's future. F1 experts have also said the wind tunnel is a big problem for Max's future at Red Bull. And according to Tom Coronel, the old war machine that Red Bull has as a wind tunnel in Milton Keynes is stopping them from making the car better. And even though the new one is supposed to be working very soon, I really doubt that it would help with making the 2026 car better. If it did, comments about Red Bull being behind in the new rule period wouldn't be talked about this much. And when talking about this more, Coronel said, "The first problem is that Red Bull has a wind tunnel that's way too old right now. I think that's simply the key, especially now that airflow will play a slightly more important role than it always has, because the floor is obviously very important. Then you need a wind tunnel with a moving floor underneath and good airflow. And only then can you put the finishing touches on it. And that's what Red Bull simply doesn't have." But if you ask Martin Brundle from F1, he wouldn't have the same opinion about Red Bull's engines. As he went on to say, "I've been around the Red Bull engines. My goodness, what an amazing setup that is. So I think it's going to be quite interesting. If there are cards to be played in terms of leaving anywhere, how quickly do they have to be played? And do you want to play them really?" And now, there are questions that need to be answered beyond Max Verstappen's decision, such as who will drive for Red Bull and Racing Bulls after he might leave. There's no doubt that Hadjar is being prepared for the seat. He's been doing amazingly well as a driver of the Fienza-based team, and I don't think it would be fair to give that seat to anyone else. On the other hand, doing well in Racing Bulls doesn't automatically mean that you're going to be a great driver in Red Bull. Actually, the opposite. We've seen how Lawson and Tsunoda have failed to meet expectations, and I'm worried that before Red Bull fixes their problems inside the team, we're going to be left with ruined careers of young drivers. Then there's Lindblad that needs to be talked about as well. The young F2 superstar and Red Bull rising star is expected to make his first appearance in a Red Bull connected team. Even though the first plan was for him to be a Racing Bulls driver just to get used to the sport first. But with how everything's moving with Red Bull and Verstappen, I can clearly see him being put right into the fire as a Red Bull driver because, quite honestly, he won't have anyone to prove himself to. Yes, Hadjar might have a bit of an advantage thanks to the experience he's got compared to Lindblad, but it doesn't automatically make him a sure thing for the leadership role if Max is not part of the team. Russell could be thought of as the next driver of interest, as it would be the perfect revenge story on Mercedes, proving that Wolff and Verstappen were wrong to think that they would be ahead of Red Bull. But with all of this in mind, do you think Verstappen's decision is going to be heavily changed by the engine problems that the Austrian team is reportedly going to have with Ford? And more importantly, if it does, where do you think it puts Max in the near future? Let us know in the comments below. Someone want to do that? Make sure to click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now.